Welcome to African Women Podcast, a space where we celebrate women leading change across Africa. From sustainability to innovation, to leadership and empowerment, we bring you conversations with inspiring women shaping the future. Join us as we explore their journeys, challenges, and the impact they are making one story at a time. This is more than just a podcast. This is a movement for progress, resilience, and the Africa we want. My name is Melissa Babil, and I'm an African Union Media Fellow from Mozambique. This is the African Women Podcast. Let's dive in.
The Maputo Protocol in Article 13 guarantees women's right to economic and social opportunities, including access to credit, business ownership, and leadership roles. Agenda 2063 reinforces this with its call for gender equality in all sectors, including finance and governance. Women entrepreneurs in Africa are proving that financial independence is possible. But how do we create a path for more women to sit at the decision-making tables?
Welcome to today's episode where we celebrate women breaking barriers and driving change across Africa. Today we have the honor to have Madam Rabecca. Welcome.
Thank you, Melissa. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you so much. So, you have achieved so much in your career, from chartered accountancy to sustainability leadership. What motivated you to pursue that path?
Thank you for that question, Melissa. So I was motivated to transition into sustainability leadership, primarily because I started to get introduced to the world of sustainability about maybe 4 years ago, whilst I was at KPMG here in Zambia. I think ESG at that time, and I'll use ESG and sustainability interchangeably, not that I'm trying to define something differently, but at that time, you started to see a lot of change happening from a sustainability perspective. You started to hear a lot around the COPs, so the different gatherings of world leaders, whether it's Egypt. I think the most recent one that I remember, the first one that I remember hearing about was the COP in Egypt. So you started to hear a lot around the work that we're doing globally to mitigate and manage the impacts of climate change. And that whole conversation brought me into the sustainability world. So the more I dug into everything that's happening, the more I realized that this is really the next big thing. So yes, I'm a chartered accountant. How do I then leverage my skills to now transition into something that's going to be the next big thing? So I started to read up. I got a certification. I actually started working on a certification back in 2021, I believe. And then I stopped. But then fast forward 2 years later, I actually completed it. So I am a certified sustainability professional. But that's something that I had picked up back then and then decided to finish it when I got a bit more serious around it. I think for me, the reason why I'm pivoting towards sustainability is that we need to do more than just our day-to-day work. We need to drive impact. So everybody, whether you're an accountant, you're a CEO, you're a risk manager, whether you're a videographer, whatever you do, there's an impact that you have, whether it's positive or negative. And it's not just on the environment, it's on people that you work with, it's on the communities that your businesses work in. So how are you driving positive impact? So that pretty much led me to want to explore more around what sustainability has to offer. So I'm still a chartered accountant. And I will still remain a chartered accountant. But what I'll see myself do more of is pivot towards the sustainability related activities.
And what's the core of sustainability leadership?
So the core of sustainability leadership, and it's a vast spectrum, because if you think about it, even in our own organization where I work currently at PwC, globally, we're offering different services to clients. So whether it's helping them build their strategy around sustainability, whether it's helping them implement policies, processes, systems, and structures, and then lastly, helping them with reporting, and then also helping them with getting assurance. So in a way, similar to what, as a chartered accountant, I would have been accustomed to. So the way I like to think about it is, if I think about financial statements, so the numbers, the balance sheet, the income statement, the revenue and expenses. So the process that we go through to build that number and then report it to stakeholders is the same process we'll have to go through from a sustainability perspective, in terms of, what do my stakeholders want to know about? Do they want to know about gender equity? What are my targets around gender equity? And what systems have I put in place to build that information, so that even when I report it to my stakeholders, that there's a process that can be verified, and then ultimately that it's showing progress? Because you might not achieve parity in the first year, but you might be saying, I want to achieve parity by 2050. So meaning on an annual basis, I'll be reporting and saying, oh, 2024, this is where we stand in terms of gender parity in our leadership. These are the initiatives that we're doing to achieve our ultimate goal. So it's still a reporting process. So you'd be leveraging your existing, for some, leveraging existing reporting infrastructure. So the leadership around sustainability is in now bringing everybody together, because it's not going to be one person or one department that achieves this. It's going to be the board being involved, all the different stakeholders being involved. So providing leadership over that collaboration that needs to happen.
Okay. And is there a lot of women in that field here in Zambia, or it's quite new?
So we're actually seeing quite a bit of interest in women, both women and men. So we do see quite a number of women that are getting involved in sustainability activities, and they're doing it in their own spaces. So if I think about, let's say, some of the banking CEOs in Zambia, right? And I'll just pick maybe one or two, whether it's Absa or Zanaco, and they're both led by women. So they're also driving sustainability initiatives in their organizations, right? They're planting trees, they're, supporting SMEs or whatever it might be that they're doing, but that's all coming from them getting more involved in their jobs as CEOs, on how they can contribute to the sustainability conversation. But then we're obviously seeing women such as myself that are now even further deep into this conversation by actually getting certified, providing insights, being that person that people can go to for advice. So my role at PwC is in supporting businesses to first of all figure out what it means for them, whether it's a compliance requirement, whether it's an ambition that they have. So figuring out, like, what exactly do you want us to help you with? This is the landscape. Zambia has its own sustainability ambitions, by the way. So Zambia, for example, has mandated that all the listed companies start to report or start to implement reporting requirements around sustainability effective January 1, 2025. So just a few days ago.
Yeah.
So the listed companies are going to now be expected to report in 2026. So which means as of day one, they need to know, what type of data do I need to start to accumulate? What are my material topics that my stakeholders care about? So my role and the type of work that I'm doing, and we're seeing some women getting more involved in such type of work based on just their existing roles, is in now supporting businesses to transition. So how do I advise a business on what this journey looks like? Where to start from? What are the short-term goals? What are the long-term ambitions? And how do they basically actualize these dreams? So we're definitely seeing a number of women, and I encourage as many to do that. There's a few platforms that are available, whether it's through Zika, the Zambia Institute of Chartered Accountants, where, women come together. We talk about this. I was speaking at a conference just recently for the women accountants, and we spoke about this. We spoke about our role in this process. And so the more we can have more of women that are championing the cause, getting in front of the advocacy and the awareness, we're going to see even more come into the limelight to support this conversation. Yeah.
Okay. And you mentioned that you work directly with businesses, and
Mm-hmm.
I would like to know the numbers related with women. Normally, women are not in the forefront of businesses. They are
Mm.
not there's not a lot of women that are founders and CEOs. So I would like to know, have you been seeing that changing, or is still we're still very far from seeing more female CEOs and so on?
Mm. I think it just depends on the industry, to be honest. I know in my profession, the
Mhm.
accountancy profession, and I'll speak specifically to the professional services firms. So
Mhm.
whether it's like your PwCs, your KPMGs, your
Mhm.
big fours, the professional accounting firms, we definitely have very little women in leadership. So
Mhm.
in terms of like the partnerships, because these
Mm.
firms are run by partners, right?
Mm.
So in terms of the partnerships, we definitely don't have parity at the
Mm.
partnership level. But in management,
Mm.
so management, meaning now the leadership team just below the partnership, you'll probably see quite a number of women in management.
Mm.
So now the conversation is how do we then get more women
In
into
partnership.
now the partnership
Yeah.
roles? And that's something that every firm is having to basically work on.
Mhm.
These are KPIs that are being put on individual firms, even from our regional leadership teams, to
Mhm.
say, okay, what type of initiatives are you going to do to drive more women into the ultimate leadership roles? So
Mhm.
beyond management, how can we support women to now get into those leadership roles? So I'll definitely say in my sphere, we definitely need more work to be
Yeah.
done. And then in I would say and I'll just, this is just guessing without having the statistics. If I
Yeah.
look at the banking industry, for example, we're seeing a lot of female CEOs. I
Ooh.
think, I mean, I haven't done the count, but I definitely think that for the top banks,
Mhm.
they're led by mostly females.
Oh, thank
Yeah,
God.
so you have Zanaco being led by a female, you have ABSA
Mhm.
being led by a female, you have Citibank being led by a female.
Mhm.
And so I definitely think on the banking side, in terms of CEOs, we're seeing a
Yeah.
lot more. As to what that looks like industry wide, including all the other financial services players, I wouldn't be able to tell you. But I think generally, if we just look at even our political landscape in terms of cabinet,
Mhm.
parliament, there's definitely more work that needs to be done. There's
Yes.
less women in those leadership roles. So I think generally, even from a Zambia perspective, I'd say we need more women in leadership.
Mhm.
As to the statistics, that's something that I
Mm.
can't speak to off the top of my head. Yeah.
Mhm. Mm.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, gender equality and women's empowerment are central to Africa's future. What do you believe are most critical steps businesses and government must take to advance these goals?
You're right. Gender equality is very critical because of the contributions that women provide in terms of a diverse perspective.
Mm.
So leadership decisions could benefit from having diverse perspectives, as opposed to having the same individuals or groups of
Yeah.
individuals basically making decisions that might have a biased view.
Mhm.
And I have had interesting, comments that I've heard past, because maybe it was just a group of men making a
Mhm.
decision,
Yeah.
but then when you hear where they were coming from, that's what they know.
Yeah.
But then had there been maybe a woman in that conversation, they would have been able to provide that extra perspective to say, no, I think we need to think about it differently.
Yeah.
So I definitely think we need more. We need to do more, and in doing more, it means that we need to come up with deliberate initiatives. So if it's the government, or if it's businesses, what
Mm.
type of initiatives are we going to be doing?
Mhm.
Obviously, we don't want to just have women just because we're trying to meet a
Yes.
quota.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the right decision, because then it is
Definitely.
going to dilute the effect for another woman that actually is competent
Exactly.
to do the work.
Mhm.
Because if you put a woman that is not competent to do the work, and then they don't succeed, then it means the women that are following that woman will have to be coming from a very difficult position to
Yeah.
prove
To
that they
prove it.
actually
Yes.
can do the work. So yes, it's good to have targets, and I think that's what you're probably going to see more of from a sustainability perspective.
Mhm.
So one of the KPIs under the ESG spectrum is in companies being able to report on what they're doing around gender parity.
Mm.
So if a company is really serious about gender empowerment, and really the contribution that brings to the organization,
Mm.
they would set a target and say, we want our leadership team to have 50-50 or 60-40, whatever that target
Yes.
is. What exactly is the business going to do then now to actualize that goal? It can't happen overnight because it's a process, right?
Mhm.
So is it mentorship activities?
Mm.
Is it really being very deliberate around, okay, perhaps maybe women can't be involved in certain places where some of these interactions are happening. So I mean, for men it's easy to hang around at a bar
Yeah.
and talk about the different opportunities that are available to them. So I
Mhm.
can meet with you as my protege, right? And I guide you on how you're going to succeed, and we'll meet in a place that is in comfortable for us. And usually it's going to be maybe in a bar or somewhere where maybe it might not be a comfortable place for a woman. So
Mm.
how do you create that comfortable place for women to also interact with leadership?
Mm. Mhm.
So if I need to interact with my bosses that are men,
Yeah.
how do I get that opportunity? I shouldn't have
Yeah.
to go and interact with them at a bar.
Yeah.
So how do we create that environment where I can still have conversations with my leaders, and then they guide me and say, okay, Rebecca, if this is the goal that you're trying to achieve, this is the path that you need to take. So it doesn't necessarily need to be in an uncomfortable place,
Mm.
but that requires being deliberate from the
Hmm.
leader themselves, from the company themselves, recognizing that we need more of these coaching
Mhm.
interactions or mentorship interactions.
Yeah.
And so in my firm that I'm currently with right now, we have a lot of mentorship interactions,
Mm.
coaching interactions. So you are paired. You have a mentor, you have a coach. So
Wow.
you at least have that avenue. And if that's not working, hopefully you can identify somebody else
Mhm. Mhm.
that you can get that guidance from. Because I strongly believe that to succeed, you need to be able to hear from those that have gone before you,
Yeah.
that are seeing the landscape right now. Because at a certain point, is hard work is a given.
Mm.
At a certain point, it becomes more about your visibility, your soft skills. What are some of those high impact
Mm.
areas that you need to be focused on? Yes, the technical skills, you have them. You're doing everything. You're bringing in business. But
Mm.
what exactly is going to now take it over the line,
Yeah.
so that you're now then put into that leadership role? But that requires actually having somebody tell
Yeah.
you about maybe some of the pitfalls or the journey that they've taken and how they've navigated, or recommending, maybe spend a bit more time, networking with this type of organizations,
Mm.
because they're going to give you visibility, are going to enable you to get business or whatever it is. And
Mm.
it's all mentorship at the end of
Yeah.
the day.
Yeah.
So I do think that um, mentorship is probably the most important initiative that can be implemented.
Mm.
There's obviously different, initiatives or policies that organizations can put in place that set the right culture, but creating an environment where mentorship flourishes
Mm.
and then ultimately transitions into sponsorship.
Mm.
Early on in my career, I had several mentors. Even now, I do have mentors, but it's sometimes a bit difficult to get a mentor within your. Like I mentioned, that there's very few women that are in the partnership.
Yeah.
So if I need to be mentored by a female that is a partner, let's say in the professional services world, there might be certain things that I might not be comfortable to tell them if they're at another firm.
Yeah.
So if I can have that, and lucky enough at the firm that I work at PwC, there's a female partner. So
Mhm.
that is my avenue.
Yeah.
But imagine if I didn't have a female partner and
Yeah.
I
It
was
would be
perhaps
difficult.
maybe the highest female, but not yet a partner, but
Mhm.
need guidance, then I'd have to start to think about, okay, how do I still have these conversations perhaps with
Mm.
my male leaders, and hope that the conversations
It's
would
not
still be
biased.
impactful and not
Yeah.
biased.
Yeah.
But what I can say is just creating that environment for mentorship, because mentorship can be gotten from whether it's females, from males, but it's in recognizing that sometimes you need somebody who understands your situation. And
Okay.
sometimes it might mean being able to talk to another female to say,
Yeah.
this is the struggle I'm dealing with. And it could be a struggle that you're dealing with at home.
Have you ever
Yeah.
faced any challenge
Any challenge.
in your work field because of not having that representation or a female partner or something on those terms? I don't know.
Not necessarily. I mean, I wouldn't say a challenge, because I've sought to identify, mentors. And even when I was in the US,
Mm-hmm.
I was basically a black professional, a black woman, and
Mm.
then I was a mother. So I was pretty much in three minority groups.
Yeah.
And so I had to think about, okay, what type of mentorship do I need? And what type of conversations do I need to have? So very early on, I realized that I need to figure out how I get mentored. And you'll be surprised that it's now that I look back that my actual first mentor was my supervisor.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't official that, oh, you're my mentor, I'm your mentee, but we
Mm-hmm.
would basically plan out my performance year. He was my supervisor. I would plan it out and say, okay, you want to get an exceeding performance rating at the end of the year, right?
Yes.
These are the engagements we're working on together. These are the clients we're working on together. In order for me to go and vouch for you in those discussions, I need you to do work that is above your current level.
Yeah.
And we would sit down and map out, okay, this is at your level, this is not at your level. So I need you to prioritize doing this work as well.
Mm-hmm.
um, Once you get this work done, this will become my body of evidence that, Rebecca can actually perform at the next level, and therefore
Yeah.
is exceeding performance right at
Mm-hmm.
that level. So then it felt like it was just us planning out the year. But when I look back now, he was actually mentoring me to exceed in my performance. But then when I actually went out and sought for mentorship, I thought about, what do I need right now? I'm a young mother. Let me identify mothers in leadership.
Yeah.
How did they manage? So I
Yeah.
sought out mothers in our workplace. I started structured mentorship relationships with them. From the fact that I was black, I looked out for, okay, who is the black female partner? And lucky
Oh,
enough, we
yeah.
had a black female partner.
Mm-hmm.
I sought her out, got into a really good relationship with her. I'm still in a really good relationship with her many years after I left the US. But it's in those relationships that if anything was going to go wrong, I knew they were there to speak for me.
Mm-hmm.
I knew they were there to speak for me, because even later on, I got to find out that there was an opportunity that was on the table for me to travel to, I think it was to India. And so before I was even asked whether I wanted to take on that opportunity, I think it was discounted to say, no, she's a mother.
She's a
She's not going
mother,
to want to
yeah.
go.
Yeah.
But then because my mentor was in the room, she
Yeah.
said, but have you asked her? So
Imagine.
just that one question, and she told me about it much later. But imagine you didn't have that person in the room saying,
Yeah.
but have you asked her? And truthful to it, when they did come and ask me, I obviously went and asked my husband to say, okay, there's this opportunity. Are you going to be able to stay home with our, I think our son was probably 3 years old, maybe 3 or 4.
Mm-hmm.
Are you going to be okay for 2 weeks with
Mm-hmm.
me being away and you being with our son? And my husband was like, no, 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 go for it. My husband
Oh, that's
completely
nice.
supports my career.
That's
So
nice.
he basically said, no, go for it. Now imagine if I never got the opportunity to be asked.
Asked
So how
in the
many
first
more
place.
other opportunities
Yeah.
am I not being asked because I've been discounted in the room? Because there's an assumption that has been made that I wouldn't be interested or wouldn't be able to do it.
Yeah.
And so, and maybe that's probably what I would say is the challenge. Some maybe has been brought to my attention, some maybe hasn't been brought to my attention, because
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Because I don't know. But
Which
what
is
I think,
worse.
yeah, what I think has countered it is the fact that you need as many people in the room speaking for you.
Yeah.
You need as many people speaking for you to take on opportunities when you're not in the room.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the philosophy I've just taken. Even coming back home, I've sought to just get as close to many leaders as possible,
Mm-hmm.
get them to see my potential, get them to see the work that I'm doing, so that when there's an opportunity, they will come to me. I've gotten board opportunities without even applying for them, but it's because I made a comment, or made a request to my mentor, my current mentor. She's a board chair on several boards, and I told her, I think it was about 3-4 years ago, that I would love to sit on a board, but I don't know how to do this.
Oh.
I don't know how to do this. It seems like there's never an application or an advert, but
Mhm.
somehow people are being appointed to boards.
Yeah.
How does this work? And she explained to me, this is really how it works. Usually it's by nomination, by people recognizing, oh, we need this type of expertise, audit, who is an expert in this space. Okay, let's approach them and see if they're interested. So I
Yeah.
told her that, and I got a few opportunities through that interactions, and knowing that she was there speaking for me whenever an opportunity came up.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say that I've faced challenges, but I've been in rooms where I've heard comments being made where you start to realize that, oh, if I wasn't in this room,
You wouldn't
it's
know.
quite possible that this person that is being discussed,
Mm.
that the decision could have gone a different direction,
Direction.
because there's a bias. There's a bias
Yeah.
towards thinking, or maybe she doesn't need the extra money because
Mm-hmm.
she's married, or
Yeah.
maybe she's not interested in promotion
Mm.
because she's a young mother. But you don't know. I mean, maybe she actually is interested and
Yeah.
wants to really fast track
Yeah.
her career. But then those assumptions get made when you're not in the room, and so we
Mm.
need more women in the rooms. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh my God, it's been very interesting. I would like to know about you. What do you what does it mean to you to be an African woman?
What does it mean to be an African woman?
Mm-hmm.
I think um there's a lot of history
Mm.
that we carry with us as African women, tradition.
Mm.
And so to be an African woman is it's really being that trailblazer
Mm.
that is, you know, expanding their sphere, so but still keeping the tradition. So, you know, we still have a lot of responsibilities as women. We're
Yeah.
still, you know, the individuals that are responsible for the home, the children, but then we're still pushing ahead and trying to become super women, right? So I think it's, when I think about an African woman in this current environment, we're trailblazers. Trailblazers, we're trying to go to paths that nobody has taken, pushing the boundaries, trying to break glass ceilings, but at the same time, still maintaining your foundation and still remaining grounded in your culture. Yeah.
Okay. And what is it, the Africa that you want to see in the future?
So the Africa that I would love to see is an Africa that is empowered.
Mm.
An Africa that is empowered to take advantage of its opportunities, its resources. You know, when I transitioned back home from the US, I was in the US for 12 years.
Oh, that's
4 years for school,
Mm-hmm.
8 years at KPMG in New York, financial services, like literally at the heart of financial services.
Yeah.
And I excelled. I got promoted when I needed to be promoted. I was a senior manager there.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 2017, my husband and I decided to come back home.
Mm-hmm.
So now the questions were, why would you do that? Why would you leave America
Yes.
and come back home? You know, come back to Africa, come back
Yeah.
to Zambia. Why would you leave all of that? But one thing that held true in even the conversations we were having before we made the final transition, because it took a while, because I mean, we made the decision and then had to start preparing for the transition. We didn't just get up one day and pack up our bags. We made the decision and started to actively transition. But we had to have conversations. I, for one, had never worked in Zambia because I left Zambia when I was just after secondary school.
Okay.
So for me, it was an unknown. What type of work culture will I find? But in all the conversations we were having, one thing held true was that, you know, Africa, Zambia is where the opportunities are.
Yeah.
other nationals are leaving their countries to come to Zambia. So what are they seeing that we are not seeing as locals?
Yes.
So everybody that we talked to was either doing something that was, in their own right, they were starting out something, whether it's a farming project, whatever it was, there was opportunities. Opportunities to do business, opportunities to invest and do beyond just what your day-to-day job looks like. So the opportunities were there. So the Africa that I would like to be able to see is an Africa that really harnesses the resources whether it's labor, whether it's minerals, whatever it is, we should be able to make our own wealth, our own destiny.
Yeah.
We shouldn't have to wait for handouts.
Yes. Yes.
We shouldn't have to wait for handouts. We shouldn't have to wait for, that country to donate beans to Zambia because Zambia has a drought. Zambia has to start, and Africa has to start to think about an Africa. What type of Africa are we going to have in 2050? What type of wealth are we going to create? Yeah, Africa is going to have the youngest population by 2050. And even now we can
Even
see
now,
it. Even now you can see it.
is.
We have a lot of young people that are graduating from college. There's colleges everywhere. Young people are graduating and are not finding jobs.
Yes.
So what does that mean? It means they need to find opportunities in the economy. That doesn't necessarily mean that they need to find jobs. So they should create the economic activity. So how do they create the economic activity? They need to be empowered. They need to be empowered to create businesses and become employers. The mindset around only falling back on a job has to transition. We need to become the people that actually create employment and be comfortable to do that. Right. So the Africa that I would like for us to be able to is one that is resilient, one that is socially inclusive, meaning that we shouldn't be seeing 60% of our population living below the poverty line. I think it's just unacceptable. If you look at the JCTR, I don't know if you're familiar with the JCTR food basket in Zambia. So every month, the Jesuit Society, I forget the full name, but they produce what the food basket looks like on a monthly basis. And they'll say, for a family of 5, this is how much they will need: 10,000 kwacha
per month.
per month. How many people are earning that 10,000 kwacha? Not many.
Not many. Yeah.
There's a very huge population that is earning below that 10,000 kwacha. But yet we're saying that in order for a family of 5 to be sustained, they must make 10,000 kwacha. So it means something has to change with our economic activity. We need to be able to have our population be comfortable enough to at least afford the barest minimum. That even as they're doing work, whether it's gardening or doing your housework, your house helps, that they have enough to actually sustain. But we're not there yet, because even how much people are paying their house helps, it's not at the 10,000 kwacha food basket, because their wages are also suppressed. So meaning we need to see more economic activity that is driven by more employers, more SMEs. So SMEs are going to really play a critical role. In Zambia as well, SMEs play a critical role. So we need to see, I would like to be able to see an Africa, coming back to your question, that is resilient. And when I speak about resilient, it's in making sure that we're thinking long term, that we're not thinking about just what is the problem right now. So we have a drought right now.
Yeah.
And we're not just thinking about building or just fixing that borehole or whatever it is. We're thinking about, okay, what exactly is going to ensure that we have a resilient water system in 2050? Are we thinking that far ahead? Are we thinking about, the agriculture practices right now? Are they sustainable? Is it sustainable for us to wait for the weather or the rains to rain the way it used to rain? Our aunties and uncles in the villages, they wait when it rains. They were told when it rains the first time, there's a whole system that they've figured out. Then you plant, but then the rainfall patterns have changed. So what it means is that we need to start to think about, how do we still continue doing what we're doing, but in a more resilient way. So resilience in our food systems, our water systems. The power conversation is obviously a much bigger one, but we have to be, whether it's at an individual level, business level, or government level, we must all be building resilience. We can't be sitting back and saying, oh, but we don't contribute so much to the greenhouse gases. I mean, I've heard people even say, oh, but I don't even believe in the science around climate change. I'm like, okay, you don't believe in the science, that's fine.
Yeah.
But with what we're experiencing right now, how are you going to build resilience in everything that you do? How are you going to make sure that your farm is not affected? So you grow tomatoes. How are you going to make sure that you continue growing tomatoes the entire year?
Yes.
And that you don't lose the business that you have to ShopRite?
Yeah.
You spend so much time to get that business to enter ShopRite. You can't afford to lose it on account of you didn't build resilience into your irrigation or your farming system. So I would like us as Africans to think beyond just the now, to think about what type of Africa do we want to see in 2050? What are the trends? What trends will be prevailing in 2050? We have a young population. Technology is going to take over. There'll be, fractures in, geopolitics, whether it's Ukraine. We don't know what war will be happening in 2050. We don't know whether it will be Russia fighting, I don't know who. But how does that impact Zambia? Or how does that impact Africa? And how do we insulate ourselves from the geopolitics that are happening? We shouldn't have to be affected because Ukraine can't give us the wheat that we need. Zambia should produce its own wheat. How do we get to that place to produce our own wheat? So I think that's the type of Africa that I would like us to be able to see. One that is resilient to all these different effects. One that is socially inclusive. So we have more women in representation, more women in leadership. And then one that is, one that is socially inclusive, is resilient, and ultimately prosperous. Because we have a lot of resources. A lot of resources that we can harness.
Oh, thank you so much for this conversation. It's been very fruitful to get to know you and how you think about gender equality, women empowerment, and so on. I wish you the best of luck, and I wish you a very good year since we are in the beginning of the 2025. So thank you so much, Madam Rebecca.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you for the opportunity to have this conversation with you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Before we close this magnificent episode, please share with us in the comments below, what is it the Africa that you want? See you next time.